Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another enlightening episode of Friday AI, where we explore the cutting edge intersection of technology and business. And today we're thrilled to host a special guest, a good friend of mine who stands at the forefront of this sort of dynamic field. So please join me in welcoming Jim Harris, a visionary thinker and one of the world, if not North America's leading authorities on disruption, innovation, and digital transformation, as well as artificial intelligence. So he's a celebrated international best-selling author and a highly sought-after keynote speaker. So Jim has captivated audiences in over 70 conferences annually, both personally and virtually, sharing profound insights on digital disruption and innovation. And I'm thrilled to have him here with us today to talk to you guys about what's going on in the world of AI innovation and disruption. Jim, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Andrew, I'm so excited to be here because we're living in such exciting times.
We really are. And you never know what you're going to get with this digital technology, as you and I have already encountered firsthand that unfortunately the gremlins love to come out when we're playing with this new tech. So we've had to pivot and adopt our presentation a little bit today. But I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. I got a sneak peek of it yesterday when we sat down and we did our little precursor to this session today, and even went back and pivoted the sort of lab aspect of the show to try and be able to show our audience some of the things that you told me about yesterday and innovate with some of those ideas. And so we're going to do that later today. We're going to have the lab where we're going to show you hands-on how Zapier can make you happier, and show you how to build out some of these things that Jim is going to talk about in his session today. But without further ado, Jim, why don't I let you sort of kick it off and give us your thoughts on where we are when it comes to disruption and innovation when it comes to AI and small business.
So this is really great. I love the title, Zapier is going to make you happier. So we're going to launch right into it. If anybody wants to email me afterwards, it's just jim@jimharris.com. Of course, the reason Zapier is exploding right now is the integration of AI with OpenAI APIs, and Zapier being in the middle of that, making systems work together. When you look at McKinsey, the global management consulting firm, they believe that up to 1.4% of the annual GDP is going to be resulting in automation, creating $4.4 trillion a year of benefit. So the global economy is about 104 trillion right now, and 1% every year of benefit, 1 to 1.4, due to automation and AI. And actually, that's going to have an impact of 30% of work in North America is going to be automated by 2030. Now, you might be freaking out about this, but I just looked, for instance, at the U.S. Bureau of Labor's September figures, and healthcare alone has 1.7 million job openings in the U.S. So we have a real problem with staffing and people. So AI and automation and Zapier are going to make us happier in terms of addressing these labor shortages. If you look at GitHub, you see an explosive growth of AI projects. Really, November 30th, 1 year and 1 day ago today, ChatGPT 3.5 exploded onto our consciousness, and nothing has been the same ever since. This is the most wild ride since the birth of the web in 1993 with Mosaic, then Netscape. So let's actually jump right in and see what is this really all about. I was keynoting at an independent insurance agent conference called IndyTech in Indianapolis. And one of the following keynotes was an insurance agent who's using Zaps to do wild things. And I'll give you 3 examples. So the first one is somebody goes onto his website at 4 a.m. and says, I want life insurance right now. And so here's the Zap he created. It's kind of shortened and edited down. So they key in on his website and he uses jot form. What's your age, your income, how much is your house worth, how much debt do you have, how many dependents you have, and he takes all that data and using ChatGPT says how much coverage should this individual carry. He gets that number back, and then he takes that and formats it as a currency, and then sends a prompt out to the most tech forward life broker in the US and says, give me 10 quotes for this age and this amount and all these parameters. Instantly it comes back and gives him 10 quotes, and he takes the best one, the least expensive. And then he has OpenAI format a selling letter in his Gmail about why you should deal with our brokerage. Here's how much you should carry. Here's how much it'll cost. Here's how we service our customers. So and then sends that email out. So from the customer perspective, it's 4 a.m. I've just keyed in, 7 parameters, and 3 seconds later in my inbox is a 1.5-page email outlining exactly how I can bind a policy. And he says, you can either bind it now with a digital signature like DocuSign, or you can call us at 9 a.m. in the morning. Now, this blows me away. Is he going to outperform others who don't automate processes? One of the things CJ mentioned, he sells home insurance as well. 85% of the quotes that his staff used to, put together never transacted. They're like potential homeowners who are doing what if scenarios. How much will, house insurance cost me if I buy a house? Imagine you can automate those 85% that never transact, and your sales staff time is now just directed at the 15% who are going to bind a policy. How is it going to do? Are you going to do better than your competitors? This is wild. Here's another one. Yeah, we'll stop in about 5 minutes and have a little discussion here.
Yeah, we got lots of feedback and comments coming through on the chats too. Everyone's excited to hear all this great stuff, and it really is amazing how much that this can improve the efficiency of your practice. But to hear, 85% of their practice was spent dealing with these tire kickers, for a lack of better words, and now that's all automated. That's
all automated. So CJ, he's in Tennessee, and his company has 700 Google reviews. Now, a lot of young people, Gen Zs, younger millennials, are making their decisions about who to deal with based on Google reviews. So how do you allocate all the staff time to respond to 700 Google reviews? So what he's done is he's automated that process too. So what happens is, boom, a new Google review goes up. The Zap continually monitors for a new review. You get one into the Google Drive. It creates, it uses Whisper, which is a sentiment analyst program that's a sister program for ChatGPT. It then writes a reply to it, and then it posts it on Google. Now, he learned he had to add a step to this Zap, because you've just written a 400-word thoughtful Google review, and 1 second later, the response, which is 400 words, goes up. So he had to put a 15-minute delay into the Zap. So between step 2 and 3, he now has another sub-step, wait 15 minutes. So let's look at another one. I was working with a CEO who has 3,000 calls to a call center every day. It's for a charity. They do fundraising, and they were sampling 2.5% of those calls to improve quality and for training purposes and so on. And,
because it just would have been too big a job to do manually, right?
But if you record if your system is VoIP, all those audio files are now digital, and you can use AI to transcribe them to text. Then you can put them through Whisper, which we've already mentioned for sentiment, And you can say only highlight out of the 3,000 calls, the 0.3% where somebody gets angry. It's either the CSR got angry or the customer or the prospect got angry. And now your supervisors are just reviewing, 30 to 100 calls a day that are problematic, as opposed to randomly trying to find a needle in a haystack, 2% of the 3,000. So the other thing you can do is you can say, who is our best CSR, who outsells everybody else by 3x? And you can analyze what is it that they say and do that makes them so successful as a salesperson. And then use an automation system like this to improve the quality of every single person's call. What is any CSR doing that is deficient? And how can we use this as a training opportunity to improve everyone? A rising tide lifts all ships. So this is just an example of an inbound call that was analyzed this way. So I want to look at this. This blows me away. There are 1.7 million job openings right now in the healthcare industry in the US. This is from the US Department of Statistics Labor Department's analysis of September. And when you look at it, they lump healthcare in with education. It's 1.9 when you lump in education, but just healthcare is 1.7. That's a huge yawning gap. So I was in doubt.
But look at those professionals. Can we rewind it 1 second? Look at those professional services. I mean, we in the accounting world feel that pain very much because we have struggled to find qualified resources ever since COVID.
So if you are not automating, you're dealing with this yawning gap of 1.6 million job postings being open in September in the US for professional services and business services. So we have to automate.
Absolutely.
So this blows me away. I was in Davos in January. I'm going back next January. And I was really excited because I gave Swiss Re, when I shot this video, the choice of hat or no hat, and they picked hat. So I was so excited. I got to channel my inner Canadian hoser, okay? Yeah, over there in Davos with my hat, So really excited
Totally
about
cool,
the hat in this picture. But we were looking at the future of work. And I don't know if you know, but 100,000 nurses in the US quit the profession during the pandemic. They were working double and triple shifts. They got COVID. Yeah. They got long COVID. They were so frustrated watching people die in the hospital. So 100,000 people quit the profession. And you just cannot hire enough nurses. So Providence Health, a health district in the US, decided to do something about it. They studied the function of nursing, and they found that 30 to 40% of a nurse's job is keyboarding, charting, or sticking a thermometer in a patient's mouth. Now, Andrew, they also
or somewhere
else. We're not going to talk about that. So they looked at the job and they said, we don't need a healthcare professional with years of training to chart, keyboard, or take temperatures. So they reassigned that to admin people who they can more easily get than nurses. And surprise, surprise, their nursing shortage went away. It's called deconstructing jobs. We need to deconstruct jobs and use best available technology because we can't find people. It's about mindset, culture, people, and training. It's not just about technology. I want to look quickly before we get to our first round of questions about why is all this happening? This is not my daughter. I just love the face of this kid. So why is all this happening? Well, you've all heard about Moore's Law. And when you look back in 1970, at the bottom left, there were 2,000 transistors on an Intel CPU. And today, with an Apple M1, there are 114 billion. I feel like Dr. Evil. 114 billion transistors on an Apple M1. So this has fundamentally changed the game, and it's fundamentally changed the cost of computing. When you look at computing, a gigaflop is doing 1 billion floating point operations in a single second. 1 billion operations, 1 second. And in 1961, on mainframes, a gigaflop was $164 billion. This year,
Nice and affordable.
what's that?
Nice and affordable for a small business, right?
This year, a gigaflop is a single cent. And that's like so 2023 a figure. The price is going down for there.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons we're seeing this explosion of automation, this use of LLMs, large language models like Google's Bard or Chat GPT 3.5, 4, and others, is because the compute power has fallen more than 100 billion x since 1961. Now, here is something that's weird. People out there in the metaverse, in internet land, did anybody ever see this movie called Her with Joaquin Phoenix? If you saw it, you can type it into the chat there. Now, the actor, his character, it's Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin's character falls in love with an operating system, an OS. Now, it's on his laptop and on his smartphone, and you think, wow, that is way too.
And we can't really blame him because it was Scarlett Johansson.
Like if it were Scarlett Johansson, even just her voice flirting with me, maybe I'd fall in love with my OS. And you go, no, there's no way that could really happen. Robert Johnson saw it. But I want to introduce you to Karen Marjorie. She's a 23-year-old Snapchat influencer, has 2.6 million followers. Her team fed her 2,000 hours of YouTube video into the developer model of ChatGPT. It fed every single social post she's ever put up into it. And they created Karen.ai, the virtual girlfriend that you can interact with for $1 a minute. Any guesses of what she's making? People in chat, guess at what she's making there.
Yeah, I'd love to see what the guesses are. I came pretty darn close yesterday when you were telling me about this. And that's only because I happen to have some clients who are in a similar type of space. And we are seeing the volume and power of influencers these days and what they can make. But this concept where people are, first of all, you combine the fact that you've now got the technology to do this, but also the loneliness that we're seeing in humanity as we're now on devices and not out in the real world. And we got our first guess in here, which just says millions.
Well, Robert is right. Karen.ai is making $5 million a year run rate. So like $5 million a year for just $200,000 of training on an LLM. So we're now
in her first year.
In the first year.
In months.
So the thing about this is that imagine every single company has an AI that's able to develop an emotional relationship with your customers. It knows when their birthdays are, their anniversaries. It can talk them through, an accounts receivable, accounts payable conflict, everything like that. So when you look at the far left here, this is Kathy Wood's research from ARK Invest. To train ChatGPT in 2020 was 4.6 million, but that's declining 70% year over year. So by the end of 2022, it was only 450,000. And then go a little bit to the right, Karen.ai was only 200,000. But here's the real kicker. By 2030, it will only be $30 to train on the world's entire data set and your company data to have your own LLM for your customers aimed just at your policies, procedures, integrations. So it's not will a company have its own personal LLM, it's when. So I have we're going to take some questions here, but before we do, this is an article that I wrote. It's a 10,000 word or 2,000 word article, and it's a magazine with a dozen different articles on disruption. They sent a professional photographer to my office to take 300 photos of me, Andrew, and this is the one they picked.
Yeah, the Death Walker
I
photo.
think, yeah, White Walker from Game of Thrones.
White Walker.
I think my time as a model on the runways of Paris and Milan is like over before it began. So I have a little survey for everyone. If you point your smartphone to the screen, although if you're watching this on your smartphone, it'll be hard to do maybe. But this is just a little question. Do you think I look A, sinister, B, evil, like Dr. Evil, C, demonic, or D, all of the above? And we'll see if this
we'd love it if you
there
guys
must be some latency on this, so we'll just skip it. But we're going to go to this is the QR code for my LinkedIn profile. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, just point your smartphone to the screen and this will take you to my profile. So we're going to pause for a minute for questions, discussion, Andrew, and see what insights people have.
Yeah, I apologize. Dropped my connection for a half a second there, Jim. Hopefully we are back. And, you know, I have a couple of questions for you actually about this session because, you know, if it's going to be so cheap for us to be able to pull all this information and train the large language models, where does copyright information come into play? Where does like privacy come into play? What are your thoughts about that? Because that's a really big point and a really big concern for a lot of us in the accounting and finance world. We're really excited to use all this technology, but we're sort of like, can we train it with our clients' data? Can we put our clients' data into these large language models?
So this is a really great question. There are different flavors of AI and LLMs, and we need to understand these. If you use the public version of ChatGPT, either 3.5 or 4, you're putting whatever information you put out into the wild, okay? Mm-hmm. But if you have a developer license like Karen.ai, Karen Marjorie's team did to develop Karen.ai, you're not putting your data into the wild. You have like a sandbox, a term for computer developers. Or if, so developer license option number 1. Number 2, if you're a Microsoft subscriber, Microsoft is embedding ChatGPT as an engine, an AI into all their products. Microsoft, if you subscribe, has no interest in putting your proprietary data into the wild. So you have to distinguish between the public version of ChatGPT and these private versions. And this is a very important point. You have to train every single person in your organization about what are these guardrails, because your staff are using this right now. Not the CEO who's 65, who doesn't even, you know, who has his assistant print out all his emails. He or she isn't using it, but you know, everybody's a Gen Z and a millennial. They're using this. The adoption is staggering. So you really have to train every single person in your organization in this new technology and have teams working to figure out how to use it for maximum benefit with, at the same time, mitigating risk.
Yeah, because it was really interesting to me when I went down to QB Connect, which is a massive accounting conference in our field. And I would ask everyone that I met, like, how are you using AI in your business? And what I found interestingly was that the small guys were, you know, a little bit more hesitant, like, hey, I'm worried about client confidentiality, or I'm worried about the technology is evolving. I don't know where it's going to go, when I'm going to get into it. Whereas when I talked to the bigger firms, the larger mid-sized firms, they were all doing it. And again, they probably had access to enterprise versions of the software where the client data was more secure and protected. But it is definitely a big point. But another point that came up was, you know, relates to a question that's brought up by Brian, who asked, you know, well, how did CJ's reviewers feel when they learned they actually got an AI reply?
They didn't learn they got an AI reply. They have no idea they're getting an AI reply.
It
Like,
passed the Turing test, as you would
it
say.
passed the Turing test. So,
Yeah.
if the AI is really good, and in Zap, you can create a pause, right? So if you create a new Zap, a new process, you can say, I want to review each email before it goes out. And so
Mhm.
CJ, that's what he'll do. When he's starting a new Zap, he'll pause the process and he'll personally review every single email before it goes out just to make sure there are no rough edges. And once, he's gone through a couple dozen, they were all perfect, he lets it run.
Right. And I've got a funny story to share about why you need to do that. And we're actually going to show you today in the lab how easy it is to build out that automation in Zapier. We're going to actually build that out today. And in fact, that was the one that I went last night and I built out based on Jim's session. I was like, that's absolutely brilliant. But the one caveat to that, and why I think that having a delay, and in fact, I'm thinking of slightly modifying it. Maybe we'll even do it today to actually just post it to a Google form first. And then when someone comes in and approves that in the Google form, puts an X in a certain column, then it posts it. Because the funny story that I have is that I've got a colleague that some of you saw in past shows, Kasim, who's worked with us, and I've shared this story once or twice before. But the AI actually fired him because when ChatGPT first came out, I was like, I hate email. I'd love to create an autoresponder that would deal with all my email. And it was going great for the first couple, and it was providing really what sounded reasonable answers until it got to his email, where it basically said to him, love your work. This is great, but I think it's time to call this project quits, effectively. And he had to reach out to me. So there is still, I think, a need to have some sort of quality controls in this, but it's still definitely possible to do that. And I think what's really interesting, and one of the things that we pulled out of your slide presentation today was a video that I think a lot of people in the community have probably seen, which is that Google video where the AI is having a conversation and booking an appointment with a hair salon. And it's a great example, I think, what you were going to demonstrate of how AI is passing the Turing test. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Turing test, and Jim, maybe you can explain what the Turing test is
Sure.
with the drapes.
So imagine on a stage there are two screens, and there are two entities behind these screens, one behind each. And after interacting with both of them for 5 minutes, you say it's two people behind the screens. The screens come down, one's a person and one's a computer. That computer has then passed the Turing test. It was so good you thought it was a person. And this is what we're experiencing in these zaps that CJ is doing with Google
Yeah.
review posts and with
Yeah. These large language
emails to
models
clients.
sound amazing. And 11 Labs, if anyone's played around with that voice to text, it sounds like a person. It is really, really good. And I think that there's some artwork and some playing around that it requires to get your little custom projects to be able to do that. But it is certainly possible. And I think one of the other projects that we'll hopefully be able to highlight today too is in past shows, I've talked to you guys about how easy it is now to build GPTs. So we did an episode where we built a GPT, which is sort of like building your own. What was the name of that dating AI?
Karen, well, it's not
Karen,
dating, but Karen.ai.
Karen.ai. So you can build that. And in fact, I built one of my father, George Wall, who's now 82 years old, and being able to have those memories and be able to create that repository of someone that I can go back to and have conversations with. And you can build those around, and this is where the copyright information will come into play. You can start building that around other public facing figures. I could build a Jim Harris one based on all the content that you have out there in the world. I could pull your blog articles. I could pull, video recordings, your YouTube channel, and I could create in right now for like $50 a month. I can start creating these, or $20 a month with ChatGPT. You can build a GPT based on all that content.
So I
And
can
then,
stand up, Andrew, and develop or deliver a 4-hour webinar, and the AI system will see how I speak, how my mouth moves, how my reactions are, and it will train on my image and my voice. And then after that, we can take that 4-hour video and translate it into dozens of different languages. So it sounds like I'm speaking Mandarin or German or Spanish. And then the next step is, now that the system has been trained on my visage, we don't even need me anymore. We just feed a script in, and it will create the video in whatever language we want, and boom. So we're getting to a whole area where marketing in Toronto, there are 200 languages spoken. We are the most multicultural city in the world. We are the modern day Constantinople. And so what are the implications for sales, for marketing, for FAQs to different ethnic communities?
Mhm.
It is mind blowing. And really, what we're seeing is the intersection. Zapier is at the heart of this thing because the LLMs are exploding our capability, and our old systems aren't able to do the things. But there's so much froth in the startup space that when you use Zapier, it really can make you happier because you can do all sorts of things that were not possible before.
Yeah. Now, Rachel is saying there's no such thing, Jim. We will always need you, the human. And I think that
I love you too, Rachel.
now I do think to some extent that we, in the interim, where I think some of this technology does pass the Turing test and some of it doesn't. And what I found in our own experience when we rolled out a chatbot on our website, when like there's a hesitancy to want to engage with artificial intelligence. You look at Brian's question about how do people feel once they realize that they got an AI response. If people know that they're dealing with AI, it gives them, it's as my kids would call it, cringe, right? Or sus, right? And they don't like it and they want to deal with a human. So I think in the interim, there's going to be a little bit of wrapping humanity around AI.
So I want to argue the contrarian view. I speak, 70% of my revenue comes from speaking at conferences and seminars all around the world. And if anybody online knows a conference or seminar where you feel you could add value, please let me know. Email me, jim@jimharris.com. But, I look at it, and the decision makers who hire me are CEOs. They
Mhm.
don't text. But you know what? They give the job of creating the shortlist to some Gen Z or younger millennial in their organization. And the only thing they do is text. They don't phone. They don't, so we have to have text as a response, even though the final decision maker doesn't text. So you have to look
Right.
at the demographics of not just your customer, but who are creating the shortlist. Or I was working with investment advisors for high net worth individuals. And, they say, our customers don't want to trade their portfolio on their smartphone. Yeah, I get that because they're
Right.
85. They got cataracts. They can't see the small screen. But when
Yeah.
granddad dies and his $10 million is cast to the wind with the 12 grandchildren, they're all going to Well Simple because they're
Mhm.
smartphone centric. So you can't just pay attention to who your customers are. You have to see uh, what are the consequences, the
As Wayne
secondary.
Gretzky would say, you got to skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, maybe it's time to open this up to our lab and show people a little bit about how they can actually start skating to this puck and start implementing this technology. So let me get my screen up here. We're going to
I'm going to
have a
stop
little bit of
sharing my
inception
screen.
for a second as I,
I just
yeah.
stopped sharing my screen.
Da, 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 da. I'm going to move this over. Okay. And my screen is coming up. Just bear with me. It's wanting to have some fun today. and take its sweet time to get this stuff up. But it was really interesting because um, to be able to implement this. And now, have I frozen?
I don't see your screen yet, just so you know. And if you're having problems, Andrew, with the lab part, I can. I have a ton more material I can cover.
It's yeah. Save the lab for another day because it doesn't want to.
Part two.
Even though it was working in in the pre-presentation, I was able to get it up. No, I mean, let me see. Well, tell us a little bit more about.
Okay, I'm going to
pop
my screen
as I do my best to try and get this working.
Andrew, can you accept my slideshow? I just shared my screen again, but on the system. Can you share it? Andrew?
Come on, gremlins. Yep.
Andrew, can you share my screen? I've shared it, but for everyone to see now. Yes, Andrew is freezing up. So my screen is in the studio.
Okay. Still live, and I'm trying to get this back up. Tech. Okay, Jim, I think you're back. I apologize.
Okay, so I'm back live. So don't worry. Yeah, the system kicked me out to backstage. So I am back. I'm going to cover a little bit more material here. Here's an explosive thought. In the US, during the pandemic, they had the highest deficit spending in the world's history. And that in turn drove inflation to the highest level in the US in 40 years. It's now come down to 3.2%. But if you look at the cumulative inflation, for instance, for food for families, it's 30%. So we're living in this very high inflationary environment. In Canada, it's the same. The deficit spending for the last 3 years is greater than the last 75 years combined. So Canadian inflation is the highest in 30 years. And we have to embrace technology and innovation because they are hugely deflationary. I was just working in Fenwick, Ontario yesterday. And when you look at the price of a long distance call from Fenwick to Paris, France, adjusted for inflation, it was $10 US a minute in 1980, adjusted to $2023. So if you had 30 people on a global conference call for strategy, that's a $10,000 US call. But when you do it by Zoom, it's free. The point I'm trying to make here.
Or $20 a month or whatever you're paying for your monthly license.
Exactly. Technology and innovation are hugely deflationary. We have to embrace them.
Yeah.
They're getting at, think about that example about the 30 to 40% of a nurse's time is doing things that could either be automated or done by somebody else. We have things like otter.ai, fireflies.ai that will automatically transcribe a meeting and summarize the action items. So you don't need somebody being a stenographer recording what's happening in a meeting and typing it up. The rate of change is accelerating. It took the airline industry 68 years to reach 50 million customers. Look at the top left. And then look at the bottom right. It took Pokemon Go 19 days to reach 50 million customers. So The rate of
Yeah.
change.
And how long did it take ChatGPT?
So good question. It took ChatGPT 50 days. So
50 days. There you go.
is the environment we're working in changing faster than our company or our industry? And if the case, how do we end up accelerating the rate of change in our organization? So every year I go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January. I'm looking forward to it this year. And it's all focused on tech. And the biggest story in tech from 1 year and 1 day ago has been ChatGPT. Bottom right, it was launched November 30th, backed by OpenAI. And in the first 5 days, ChatGPT attracted 1 million users. You know, that's
Insanity.
30 times faster than Spotify. But it didn't just stop there. Benchmarking against a wider array of technologies, it took Netflix 3.5 years to reach 1 million users. It took Facebook 10 months. Facebook, of course, now has 3 billion users for Meta, all its platforms. ChatGPT, just 5 days. We have to pay attention to these fast-growing technologies. ChatGPT went on to attract another Dr. Evil moment, 100 million users in just 60 days.
2 months.
Fastest growing technology in world's history. So in January, Microsoft's invested $10 billion in ChatGPT. They now own 49% of it. And let's look at how that investment has performed. Since January, Microsoft's value has increased $1 trillion, 58% year-to-date gain on what is a huge cap stock. So that's a huge 100x ROI on that 10 billion investment. Or looking another way, Google controls 90% of the search ad market. Each 1% is worth 2 billion a year. So if by incorporating GPT into Microsoft Bing and Edge, Microsoft is able to steal 2.5% market share from Google. Google has 90%, so it should be easy. They've got no place to go but down. That's worth 10 billion over just 2 years. So
wow. Now I apologize, Jim. I actually have got my screen up. Do you mind if I go into a bit of a laugh?
I will.
Now that I have recovered,
stop, and we can always come back. Now, if I stop sharing, it might kick me out backstage again. Just to warn you.
Yeah, so we as is. I think the screen's up because I want to show people how they can how easy it is to actually implement this new technology. And so in here to Zapier, you can see I've got quite a few Zap built 3 new ones last and apparently we're going to have to refresh this.
The joys of technology.
How is that possible? And we're able, the new integration that we've got up here, to be able to actually, you don't even need to be a coder or developer anymore. All we need to do is tell it what we want to do. We can say, hey, I want to take a Google explain to Rogers, who happens, and I have the fastest that you can get with Rogers. But here we go. GPT, when a Google review is posted, can you send that Google to Chat GPT and ask Chat GPT to respond then delete before a response back as a reply to the Google review. And I'm sure I made lots of typos, but who cares? Let's see the AI generate ChatGPT can do for us, and it will actually generate the majority of this. So it's saying, look, here's the recommended process. So we're going to do a new Google review conversation. Then we're going to do. It's done the exact steps that we would need to do. So I can come in here and I can say, okay, yeah, let's try this. It's going to load it out, and I'll connect with my Google, my ChatGPT account, with any of the app, without me needing to know anything about this no code, low code interface, which is relatively easy to use. You need is a reliable internet, which I apparently do not have. Yeah, hopefully I am doing this again when the technology works better. And I will also point out, by the way, for people who haven't seen the show in the past, if you go back to some of the previous episodes from last couple of me using a Google, sending it to ChatGPT doing email for my team, as well as, analyze the key things that I need to be able to converting that candidate to a client. But it's being a little bit painful. The gremlins want to haunt me as my internet is going terribly. And the worst part is I've tried moving on my mobile phone, my mobile device as a solution. None of it wants to work for me. But here we go. We're in, and so what it's going to do is make sure that, and it's going to use the appropriate account. I can see I've got an account there already created, so we're great. So I don't need to worry about, I can continue with this. What I want to use as the trigger as far as the location. So if you have multiple locations, you can use different locations. Only got the one location, so it's able to identify that organization. And I can then go through and run a test on this to make sure it's pulling the information in. So I'm going to test that trigger. It'll in a bunch of information for me. So there we are. And so I'm going to continue with that selected record. It's pulled 3 sample records from past Google reviews. And now I want to make sure that I choose my correct ChatGPT incidents. I've got a couple. Again, I'm going to connect my account there. And I'm going to continue to my action. Now this action is important. Here we can set what instance of the model we want to use. By default, it's going to default to ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. I usually use ChatGPT 4 wherever I can. So I'm just going to use ChatGPT 4. I can do memory keys. I've again showed this in the past. This allows you but I'm not going to do that in this instance. I can also upload images if I want to use GPT's vision features. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm not even get too concerned about who the user or the assistant is, but I'm going to give the assistant some instructions. I'm going to say, you are a customer support representative, and using your knowledge from the book Hug Your Haters. And this is like one of my things, Jim, is to use books as a way of prompting your AI with a whole bunch of knowledge with just a quick line. Using the book Knowledge from Hug Your Haters to draft a response to customer reviews on Google. So I'm giving you the assistant some instructions. I can set the number of tokens. This will just take the length. And did I miss the prompt? Yes. So this is our user message. And it's putting in the comment here. And what I might say is, can you respond to a Google? And the other thing you can do is it's got all the fields that's picked up already here naturally. So I'm going to say, can you respond to a Google review? This person it will be dynamic, who posted a review saying, and we've got the comment already there. Can you make sure to reply as Andrew Wall, the owner of the firm, and make sure not to use any template holding spaces. And this is a trick I've learned, or send any additional contact info. Now, what this is doing is this is working with my instance of ChatGPT. And the reason I'm putting those caveats in is I have a whole bunch of custom instructions. So it already knows a lot about me and my organization. So I don't want it to, use any form fillers or anything like that. And that's all I'm going to do here. And now I'm going to continue and test this. And let's see what kind of response it's going to generate for me. There we are. And I'm going to test. Slowest internet connection. Hello, Frank. First, thank you for taking the time to share your detailed feedback with us and for being such a long-term valued client. A pleasure to provide you with guidance support in your successful consulting business for over 20 years. Your patience and understanding during the tough pandemic time is truly appreciated. We are pleased to see that our team, particularly SAT, has been able to assist you in getting things back on track and continually providing adept services to support your account. Client satisfaction is a priority to us, and we're pleased to see that the increased use of technology like online document signing has been beneficial for you. We are constantly striving to improve, and these enhancements are a testament to our efforts. We note your concerns about occasional delays and have made it a point to address this. We are hopeful to show improvement in this area to fully meet your expectations for the next year. Once again, thank you for your acknowledgement of your hard work. Recognition from clients like yourself gives us motivation to continually improve to ensure we always provide the best services. Best regards, Andrew Wall. I don't know about you, Jim. Does that pass the Turing test? Does that
It
sound
passes
like
the Turing test. I would not know that this was an AI.
Yeah. So I can hit continue. It's going to test the step for delay because, as you said, you want to have that delay timer. Again, I would probably recommend doing this as two separate steps so that you don't actually have a delay, that you actually put it in a holding area like a Google Sheet or something else. But given our technology issues, I'm not going to do that today. I'm just continue. Next, what it's going to do is post the Google review back as a reply. I'm going to say continue. Here's my action. So the reply, which is great. And I can hit continue. And if I would test this final step, you do always have to test your steps, and the steps have to actually work before you can publish. So for example, it doesn't like that for whatever reason. So it doesn't like my location. So the review ID, let's see if we've got something else there. Should be the review name. Let's see if that solves our problem. Simultaneous live connection multiple times. We're able to build this out and test this tap. Come on, internet. You get whammies. There we go. I'm able to publish. So we were able to get that done in under 10 minutes with terrible internet. We were able to build out that solution. That's how it is to build Zap using the new AI integration. And again, I want to take a minute to go back and show you guys some of the other we were able to do. And right, the sky's the limit. You're only limited by your imagination. And I'm going to show you guys some things that we may have to save for another episode, given that we've got 4 minutes left, and the internet has been shaky, to say the least. But I did want to show you guys what we were able to do yesterday using HeyGen. So people know that I'm a big fan of that. What we talk about building out the avatars of my dad. We built out a HeyGen avatar, incorporating that in our business now. As of yesterday, well, we already had a welcome email, and I'll try and show you a little bit about everything worked there. Welcome email that would go out of a and with these templates, you can even say, like you can build out a script and then have certain spots in the script where you use templated information. In fact, why don't I show you, try and show you what one of those templates. Who really hopped in today and bared with me despite all of these technical struggles that I've been week. We've got another amazing guest, Hitendra Patel, who has written the book on the AI, the rise of the AI accountant. And I don't even know if I am. Are you back, Jim? Sort of. Yeah. But again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jim. If I'm going to kill my screen, see if that helps. Are you with us?
I'm here, Andrew. Yes. So everyone, it's been a great show. Just while Andrew's frozen, I'll say goodbye, and do connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Jim Harris, and Kasim posted it in chat. So do connect with me, and look forward to the next one. Rachel, so good to see you virtually online. Over to you, Andrew. Can you hear me? We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to be ending any any second now. And feel free to email me, jim@jimharris.com, if you have any questions afterwards.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate you me despite these technical hurdles we've had today. Of course, we've got to have our biggest speaker with the most technical issues. And I appreciate you bearing with me and sharing your world unity. We'll be back, like I said, next week with Kajendra Patel. We'll be talking about the rise. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and sorry for the technical issues. Bye for now.